slow your breathing and allow the noise of the present moment to soften. Because tonight we are not chasing facts or dates, we are listening to the quiet moments where the past seemed to know what was coming long before it arrived. Humanity has always been uncomfortable with the unknown future, and across civilizations, people have searched for patterns, signs, and whispers that hinted at what had not yet happened. Most of these attempts dissolved into superstition or myth, but a small number remain recorded, not because they were dramatic, but because history later followed them step by step, making them impossible to ignore. In ancient Greece, the idea of prophecy was not entertainment, it was guidance. Cities were built and wars were started because of words spoken in sacred places. The most famous of these was Delphi, where the oracle known as the Pythier delivered messages believed to come from the god Apollo. She did not speak clearly. Her words were fragmented, symbolic, and often unsettling, yet their impact shaped the ancient world. One of the most well-documented visits to Delphi was made by Croesus, king of Lydia, a man whose wealth was legendary. He wanted reassurance before challenging the rising power of Persia. When he asked the oracle whether he should attack, he was told that if he crossed the river, a great empire would fall. Croesus interpreted this as victory and marched to war, convinced the gods were on his side. History records what happened next. His forces were defeated, his capital fell, and he was captured. The empire that collapsed was his own. The prophecy had not been wrong, it had been precise, but only after the fact did its meaning become clear. This pattern appears again and again throughout history. Warnings are often misunderstood, not because they are false, but because humans hear what they want to hear. Centuries past, Rome replaced Greece as the center of power, and prophecy did not disappear, it adapted. Roman historians recorded numerous omens, dreams, and warnings, but one stands above the rest in its clarity and consequence. Julius Caesar was no stranger to danger. He had survived wars, betrayals, and political chaos, yet in the days leading up to his death, he was warned by a seer named Sparina to beware the Ides of March. This warning was repeated openly and remembered clearly. Caesar ignored it, dismissing it as fear-mongering. On the morning of March 15th, he even joked about it, believing himself safe. Yet before the sun set, he was stabbed repeatedly by senators inside the theater of Pompey. His death marked the end of the Roman Republic and the beginning of imperial rule. The warning had not been symbolic or vague, it named the date, and history followed it exactly as spoken. After the fall of Rome, Europe entered a period where prophecy moved from spoken trance to written vision. Monks, mystics, and scholars recorded thoughts about the direction of humanity. One such figure was Joachim of Fiore, a 12th century monk who believed history unfolded in spiritual ages. He wrote that the structures of power around him would collapse into conflict before a new era could emerge. His ideas were controversial and condemned, yet over the following centuries, Europe fractured through crusades, religious wars, and the collapse of medieval unity. His writings did not predict single events, but described patterns so accurate that later generations recognized them only after living through them. Prophecy here was not a date or a name, but a trajectory, and that made it even harder to dismiss centuries later. In Renaissance France, a physician and astrologer named Michel de Nostradame wrote a series of quatrains deliberately obscured by symbolism and coded language he claimed clarity would bring persecution, so confusion was protection. Many of his writings are vague and easily reinterpreted. Yet a handful remain deeply unsettling. One describes a young lion defeating an older one, piercing his eye through a golden cage, leading to his slow death. In 1559, King Henry II of France took part in a jousting tournament. His opponent, younger than him, struck his lance, which shattered, sending a splinter through the king's visor into his eye. The helmet was gilded gold. Henry suffered for days before dying. The event was recorded in detail, and the match to the earlier text disturbed even skeptics. Another passage described London burned by fire in the year of the number of the beast. In 1666, the Great Fire of London destroyed most of the city. While historians reject mystical explanations, the alignment of imagery, date, and outcome ensured Nostradamus would never be fully dismissed. Moving forward into the modern era, prophecy did not disappear. It changed forms, sometimes appearing as fiction, sometimes as dreams. In 1898, a novel titled Futility described an unsinkable ship named the Titan traveling through the North Atlantic, striking an iceberg and sinking because it carried too few lifeboats. The similarities to the Titanic disaster 14 years later were so precise that readers later called it a prophecy, though the author claimed imagination. The size of the ship, its speed, the route, and the cause of sinking were nearly identical. This raised an uncomfortable question: can the future emerge unconsciously through patterns we failed to recognize at the time? In the 20th century, a different kind of prediction began to appear. Scientists, philosophers, and writers warned not of gods or omens, but of technology. They described a future where machines would move faster than human judgment, weapons would remove emotion from decision-making, and systems would grow too complex to control. These warnings were often ignored, dismissed as pessimism, yet today they feel less like speculation and more like observation. History suggests that prophecy may not be supernatural. All it may simply be the ability to recognize repeating behaviors. Power, ambition, fear, and overconfidence appear in every era, and when conditions align, the outcomes repeat themselves. The past does not whisper because it is magical. It whispers because it remembers every generation, but leaves itself unique, yet makes familiar mistakes. The people who appear prophetic may simply be those who see patterns clearly, while others are distracted. As you listen to these stories, it becomes clear that fulfilled prophecies are rarely celebrated. When spoken, they are understood only afterward. When their warnings can no longer be acted upon, this may be the most unsettling truth of all. Their future may not be hidden from us, it may be visible yet ignored now. Allow these thoughts to slow and fade. History has spoken quietly and it will continue to do so, whether we choose to listen or not.